Hi, everybody. Welcome to this season-ending edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field, and this will be our last episode of the 2025 season. We're going to wrap it up here and take a break so Wes and I can kind of get out of the office here and there over the next couple months. I'm sure we'll be back sometime before the draft, leading into all the excitement that will surround that. But Wes, before I get into some kind of season-ending topics I'd like to run past you, just want to ask if there was anything, because we covered a lot of ground in our last episode, anything from the game, from the final locker room interviews on Monday, anything that we didn't get to on our last show that you want to touch on here?
I loved you asked me this because here's the thing. The final locker room is always sort of the epitaph, right, to the season. And a lot of times it ends up just being a couple guys that maybe you thought you're going to talk to, maybe you didn't think you're going to talk to. And I'm trying to not use the word stragglers here in terms of the people that are traversing the locker room on that day. But it's a hit or miss proposition.
Yeah.
You and I have said this to each other. We've said this to pretty much every coworker that was willing to listen. I was blown away by the Packers' final locker room on Monday morning. That was the most people that have ever spoken. That is the most amount of players who were injured that provided clarity on their situations and what they're dealing, what they dealt with, what the offseason is going to look like for them. There was a time about midway through that locker room where I was perfectly content with Zach Tom speaking, Nate Hobbs speaking, and I thought, okay, well, these will be some of the stories we'll talk about this week. But then in came Micah Parsons. In came Devontae Wyatt. In came Tucker Kraft. And in Wyatt's case and in Parsons' case, both of these guys, crutches, the bikes that you use to keep power, weight off your feet.
Yeah.
I was really inspired by those guys doing that because they didn't have to do that. There's been so many times where guys suffer season-ending injuries, Mike, and we won't talk to them again, maybe during the offseason program, possibly in some cases training camp.
Right.
None of these guys had to speak to the media on Monday, but they felt it necessary. And the message that specifically Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft drove home, I feel was really important. Because, yeah, you hope everything gets settled at the time in which we're taping this. We still don't know what's exactly happening with the head coach position, the rest of the coaching staff, what the moves are going to be for the Packers here moving forward. But Kraft talked about, in addition to the importance that Matt LaFleur has and the job he's done here in Green Bay, but also just the expectations he has for himself in this football team. Micah Parsons talking about how he has just attacked his rehab here in these opening weeks and the motivation that he feels now, wanting to be a leader for this football team, wanting to be the player that the Packers brought him in to be, and the player that the city of Green Bay and the surrounding communities have embraced him as.
Yeah.
That was, I felt like that final locker room sent a message. It sent a message of hope. It sent a message of potential. And also a feeling. Everyone always talks about, you want to move on and you don't want it to be like this and we're going to do better next year and I'm going to use this to fuel me. There was almost a little bit more vigor, I feel like, within that conversation.
I think that's why I used the word, I think I used it on our last show and I used it in what I wrote. The word that I came out of that final locker room with was resolve, because it wasn't just as you said, it wasn't just the kind of the cliched, overused lines of, I'm going to use this to motivate me, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, yeah, that was all there. And the guys who said that, I mean, are certainly genuine. Everybody has their own personalities. But there was a different feel to that and I'm not really finding the right words for it right now, but I'm just going to say it. It was sort of like the message from that locker room was, yeah, this sucks, but everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's really what it felt like. I mean, nobody was happy with how the season ended. Nobody was trying to, to make that look or feel any better than it was. But as far as looking to the future, it's like everything's going to be all right. Like this, things will be okay here. And yeah, there's going to be some determination, some resolve to not be in that situation again, and to not be talking about a playoff game that you have in your grasp that gets away, and then that's how the season ends. So, as you said, at the time that we're taping this, there hasn't really been any updates as far as the coaching thing. All we know is that the Packers are still working on a contract with Matt LaFleur. Jeff Hafley is out interviewing for jobs. We even heard that DeMarcus Covington, the defensive line coach, has been requested by the Cowboys for their defensive coordinator opening after they moved on from Matt Eberflus. So there's still a lot going on, and I don't want to get into all that because by the time this actually posts and some people are listening to it, watching to it, all the news could potentially change. I do have a handful of questions for you, though, that I'm going to throw at you as far as this being our season-ending episode. And you can take this first one, you can take it in any direction you want to. But the question is, what was your favorite moment from the 2025 season?
Everything surrounding the Detroit Lions game. It's probably also the first time my glasses have ever been off on Packers Unscripted in 10 seasons. I couldn't handle it anymore. Detroit was so much fun. There were so many layers to that game. Micah Parsons, 2.5 sacks. He gets over the 12 sack mark on the season. So that actually gave him that record of, since 1982 when it became an official statistic, the first player in NFL history, over 40 years of statistics, first guy to have 12-plus sacks in each of his first 5 seasons, kind of laid the foundation for that all-pro year. But then the way that Jordan Love, Dontavian Wicks, the way that guys played down the stretch, you and I felt that energy inside Ford Field, how difficult it has become to play in Detroit, specifically on Thanksgiving, a day that's always been the Lions' holiday. But now, coming off the 15 wins, coming off the NFC Championship appearances, they're on a different level now. Those fans are energized to a different level. And
Hell's Bells on third down hits a little different in that building than it did a few years ago, doesn't it?
Sure does, especially in the second half, right, of competitive football games. So I felt like that was amazing. You really could pick out any moment from Micah Parsons' season. Even the chase down sack of Jared Goff in the opener against Detroit was a big moment. But I think when we talk about the Packers making the playoffs, that was such an important day on Thanksgiving, and for Green Bay to take the power back. And yes, there's going to be a major rivalry now with Chicago. Would not surprise me at all if they open against the Bears in 2026. But I felt like the Packers being able to avenge their recent losses to Detroit, being able to win there and also win in the opener, that ultimately was what kind of set the tone for Green Bay. Yeah,
those are some good choices for me, and this is kind of odd, which is why I gave you the opportunity to take it any which way you wanted to. My favorite moment of the year, of the season, was turning on my phone after the flight I was on landed in Washington, D.C., because I was taking my daughter on a grad school prospective visit, turning my phone back on and seeing that the Packers had traded for Micah Parsons.
Yeah. It's my least favorite moment, but that's good for you.
And you were left here by your lonesome to deal with it because I was gone for a few days. But one, there was so much excitement about it, obviously. But the other thing is it just took me back to... And for those who don't know the story, in my 20 seasons of covering this team, there is a long list of major things that have happened when I have been out of the office, when I've been out of town, on vacation, whatever the case might be. And it goes back to the summer of 2008 when I was at Cub Scout camp with my son. And a message while I'm out in a big field playing capture the flag with a bunch of Cub Scouts, and a message comes on my BlackBerry, I might add, which is what we had back then, that Brett Favre had decided to apply for reinstatement with the commissioner's office and come out of retirement, which of course then just, set off everything. So this whole thing of me always being gone when something big happens, it started then, and it includes when the Packers signed Julius Peppers in 2014 and I was in Florida, and when they traded Devontae Adams in 2021 and I was out of town, and there are a whole bunch of other things in between. But anyway, like that moment just brought me back to, here it is. Packers are doing something huge, and I'm not there. I happen to be out of town again.
The weird thing about the Parsons, and obviously I say this in jest, I hope that doesn't get taken out of context in terms of, it was very exciting to get Micah Parsons, although it was tough that they lost Kenny in that trade. But
yeah, for sure.
But what was funny about the Parsons one that it's going to go down as an all-timer, because Devontae, there were a lot of rumblings to that point that there might be a trade. They're tagging him, possibly moving him. Maybe he wants to go back to the Raiders. Maybe he wants to go closer to the West Coast. Obviously reunite with Derek Carr. And while there were some rumblings about Micah, none of it felt real.
Yeah.
I remember doing an interview with Matt Ramage a week before the trade actually happened. And I'm like, it wasn't that the Packers didn't want him. They obviously want him. Everybody wants him. But how the Dallas Cowboys would let him go, a guy that he's not 32.
Yeah.
He doesn't have his best years beyond. The guy's 26 years old. He hasn't even signed his second contract yet.
Right.
He's on this Hall of Fame trajectory. Are the Dallas Cowboys really going to let him out of their grasp? And it wasn't like there was a public bidding war. It was the Packers might be interested, and the Packers have traded for Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
And while you were getting off the plane, I'm sitting there on the club level of Lambeau Field at a Mark Murphy Hall of Fame press conference. And I will never forget that moment where Mark gets done with his just opening statement, and John Miller from WGBA is behind me and goes, Mark, we just received word here that the Packers have traded for Micah Parsons. Basically what's your reaction is that? And I'm sitting here staring at Mark, and I hear John's voice in the back of my head, and I'm like, this is not real. This is wild. And Mark gave a good answer about, well, it's not my decision anymore. That's other people's. But yeah. That whole weekend was a fever dream. But I'll bring it all around by saying this. Parsons ends up coming out. He has an amazing press conference with everybody. And I thought that also, up until the last one of the season, I mean, just the amount of discourse we had with him.
Yeah.
And for him to be the player that he ended up being for the Packers this season, when you talk about the reasons for a bright spot here, I think there are three staples. Honestly, I think there are three staples right now with this football team. With Jordan Love becoming the player that he's become, Micah Parsons looks like one of, if not the best defensive all-around football player right now. And then honestly, I really do throw Tucker Kraft into that. I wrote about it in Insider Inbox today. The trek that he was on, he's on pace for a 1,000-yard season, double-digit touchdowns. He was bringing a dimension to this Packers offense that I'd never seen before. I didn't cover, Paul Kaufman. So to have all these type of things come together, a very solid foundation for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I enjoyed just getting to know Micah Parsons a little bit as a player and a person over the course of the 12 plus 13 games, however many it was that he ended up playing. And I look forward to more years with him in Green Bay. Question number 2, play of the year in your mind.
Oh, there's so many good ones here to pick from.
I can go first if you want to think a little bit.
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay. I had 2 options here. One is right out of what you said with regard to my last question, Detroit on Thanksgiving. Dontavian Wicks catching that fourth down pass with his shoe coming off and the whole thing to seal that game in Detroit. I know both you and I were sitting up there in the press box at Ford Field, not even thinking the Packers were actually going to snap the ball. Yep. That it was just kind of a ruse and okay, if they don't get him to jump off sides, you take the delay of game, you punt the ball, and the defense is going to have to close it out. And then they snapped the ball, and then Love gave Wicks a chance to make the play one-on-one against Brian Branch, and he loses his shoe when he jumps up and he makes the catch, and it was like, oh my gosh, they just won the game. Like it was boom, like the game was over. So that's one. The other one for me is Keyshawn Nixon's interception to seal the win against the Bears at Lambeau Field. I never would have thought in a million years that was the last victory we were going to write about and talk about on the season. But that was a big moment, and it put the Packers in first place in the NFC North, and things were pointed in a certain direction. And then the following week is obviously when Micah Parsons went down with the injury, and then everything changed for the rest of the season. But those are the ones at the top of my list.
Yeah, those are good picks. I think I'm pretty much torn between two, and I'm just sticking on the offensive side of the football. The Tucker Kraft 59-yard touchdown is always going to kind of stick out to me a little bit just because he was rumbling, bumbling, stumbling through everybody. And I thought it really demonstrated just the type of player he is, and when he is in the open field, how difficult he is to tackle. He's almost like a running back out there, right? It's not just like he catches the ball and he goes down. I mean, this guy's going to make a play happen.
Yeah.
And I wish I would love to say the Romeo Dobbs one-handed catch against Chicago, because that was just, I still to this day don't, days later, I don't know how Rome caught that, but obviously the
phenomenal
Packers lost
catch.
that game.
Yeah.
And then the other one is just the leaping Christian Watson catch in New York. That Christian Watson, to me, that was the I'm him.
The one in the corner of the end zone.
Corner of the end zone.
Yeah, for the go-ahead touchdown.
And he's double covered. He's 6'4", and he's using every single inch of his body to make that catch. I mean, Christian Watson, the ultimate tragedy of the 2025 Packers season is other than 2 quarters, we did not get to see Christian Watson and Tucker Kraft on the field together.
Yep.
Tucker was there the first 8. Christian was there for the last 9, or last 10, and it just, you would have loved to seen them all together. But in New York, wild game, Jordan jams his shoulder, and Malik does some crazy stuff. I mean, just weird stuff happened all over it, and it ends up being a down to the wire football game with a team that ultimately ended up being right up at the top here for the number 1 pick. And
yeah, because Jameis Winston kept throwing the ball to the Packers and the defenders couldn't catch it until Evan Williams finally caught the one at the end in the end zone to get the INT for the win.
And Green Bay finally ended up sealing the door. But the Christian Watson one, I just think when I think of the most beautiful plays, if that's going to be like the litmus test I use for my favorite play of the year, that's something you'd put on a poster, the way that play unfolded.
All right, I got 2 more for you.
All right.
One word to describe this season when you reflect on it.
Oh, that's a good one, Michael.
And I can go first again because I'm the one who got to prepare for this, and I'm putting you on the spot.
No, but you gave me some breath on the last one. I'm trying to think of something that's not overly emotional, but also somewhat honest. Well, definitely honest, but somewhat apropos of where things were. I think the word I would use is close. In both variants of the word, right? Where they were so close in so many instances to being, I think, the team that we all were talking about the first 2 weeks of the season, right? Mm-hmm. And even with all the injuries that they dealt with, the Packers still didn't, with a few exceptions, maybe 2 exceptions, where they really, truly just got beat. There wasn't those type of performances. Everything was close, and obviously the finish piece comes back to that. It's been the buzzword all week long, need to finish more. I somewhat laugh at it because the conversation down in Chicago all week is they need to start faster.
Yeah.
And right. Green Bay's talking about needing to finish more, but ultimately if you have those 2 things, it is going to come back to how do you finish football games. And for the Packers to be as good as they were this season, as talented they were, and Mike, the trade happens, and obviously he goes down, Kraft goes down, Wyatt goes down, Elton goes down, all these guys go out with some pretty big injuries. It just never quite ended up being the season that I think all of us thought that it could be. And this is what happens. This is how in the National Football League, when there's 32 teams, there's that much parity, but there's 31 that are going to ultimately be dissatisfied at the end of the season.
Yep.
It's in those narrow margins, and there's 8 teams at the time in which we're taping this that still have a shot at it. And the Packers are on the other side of the 24.
Yeah, and my word is, it's similar to yours, but the word that keeps coming to mind for me is the word tease. And I mean that both, there's a negative connotation and a positive connotation to it. On the kind of the negative side of things, it's that we saw so many moments of how good this Packers team could be. Mm-hmm. Whether you're talking, having a 9-point lead in the third quarter against the team that is sitting as the number 1 seed in the AFC, and how well the Packers were playing in that game up until that point on the road, tough place to play, really good team, one of the best teams in the league. And you throw in the performance in Detroit on Thanksgiving, the performance on the road at Pittsburgh under the lights, a primetime game. And obviously the way the Packers for large stretches of both of those games in Chicago played so well and dominated the NFC North champs. But the inability to finish off enough of those games and to put themselves in the position where we all felt they should have been, it it felt like a tease. Now the positive connotation of that is I think it also teases, going back to our earlier conversation in this very episode, it also teases that there's a lot of pretty good stuff in place for this team moving forward, and that there are going to be some changes in this and that. I mean, nothing is ever the same, but everything's going to be all right, and this team is going to come back and be in a pretty good spot, and some of these things that we saw in 2025, I think we're going to see some of that again in 2026, and can the Packers go from being close to being there to being where they want to be? So that's sort of how I look at it if I were to, try to encapsulate it in one word.
Yeah, I like how you laid that out, Mike, and you obviously had to edit my inbox. And one of the things I raised in that is, I think one of the hardest parts to swallow about the Packers, number 7 seed knock off, Dallas. Number 7 seed lose to Philly, number 7 seed lose to Chicago,
right,
is the fact that the reason Green Bay was even in that conversation to begin with was the fact that 22 draft class and the 23 draft class just completely shot jet fuel into whatever you want to call a rebuild or whatever, reloading after the Aaron Rodgers era.
The whole transition.
And you don't get draft classes where you find 3 starting offensive linemen in the same class. Actually, last year, this also shows you just how different this season was. Last year was the first time since the merger, I believe it was, that the Packers had an offensive line that consisted of 3 guys who started every game that were all from the same class.
Yeah,
that had
same
never
draft
happened
class.
before with Rasheed Walker, with Zach Tom, and with Sean Ryan. And this year, different story. Romeo Doubs, after the game, we're talking to him and very, reflecting on what he'd been through and the fact that he is an unrestricted free agent. This could be the end for him in Green Bay as he gets a new opportunity and gets a chance to finally, get that big paycheck everybody talks about.
Right.
And he's a kid from LA that, played at Nevada, that never thought he'd end up in Green Bay, and then he ended up being a contributor for 4 seasons here. And Christian Watson reflecting on how the time they spent together at the Combine, at the Senior Bowl, and that group was so tight, and one of the tragedies of it is that they weren't able to take that. The entire group wasn't able to take the next step. Watson will get a chance. Maybe some other guys will get that opportunity. Zach Tom, obviously. But the whole group that really contributed to Green Bay being in the conversation, being an 11-win team again, not being able to get to that NFC title game, not being able to get to a Super Bowl again. So it would be very interesting to see now next year with this 23 draft class in its final year together. So many great players out of that class, seeing if they can finally launch it forward.
Yeah, for sure. Last one for you. Favorite story you wrote this year? This season.
Oh, good one. That's a really good one. Is it in the regular season, Michael, or is it 2025?
At any point.
It's the Baron Sorrell one then. Because I just think it doesn't get any better than that in sports. It's such a unique story. You and you could do this for another 20, 25 years. I'm sure you want to. I could do this for another 10. I'm not going to write another story like that. I don't think there'll be another story like that. The fact that this young man from Texas comes up here at the draft, just decides, hey, you know what? I want to be there. And then that clip of Brian Gutekunst drafting him, being like, wait, he's here when he comes out on the stage.
Yeah.
And then getting a chance to get to know his mom, Selena, and just talking to some of these people that know him so well. Unbelievable to see him. And then at the end of the year, get some opportunities and really take advantage of them. I think Baron Sorrell is going to be a real player for this defense. So learning his life story and who he's all about, it made it so much more clear how this guy ended up in Green Bay, not only literally, but figuratively too. Him and his family coming up here and being a part of the draft process and waiting until day 3 in the 4th round to get taken, made a memory for himself. And now it looks like for the Packers have an edge rusher here to really develop.
Yeah. For me, again, I've got a couple, so I cheat because I give multiple answers. As far as game coverage, my favorite story, as most of the regulars to our website know, after every game I write the game recap, which is the 5 takeaways from the game, and then I write rapid reaction, which is sort of like a column or an editorial type of thing on just what I'm feeling like and what I'm hearing, processing after a game. And the rapid reaction that I wrote after the Thanksgiving game in Detroit was my favorite one of the entire season, because not only is it, okay, we're on the bus and on the plane and I'm looking forward to getting home and there's going to be this big Thanksgiving meal that my family is prepared and they're waiting for me to get home and all that, and that was all really exciting. But to be able to focus that entire column on the Packers were converting these fourth downs, they were stopping Dan Campbell on his fourth downs, and just how, it was this whole flip of the script and turn of the tide compared to the previous year's games against Detroit, when those things would go the other way, and how, thinking back to how the clutch fourth down completion to Tucker Kraft in Arizona kind of set the stage for these big fourth downs in Detroit. But you didn't have Tucker Kraft in Detroit, so it was Romeo Doubs and it was Dontavian Wicks, and so that one was just all the circumstances surrounding it, and the fact that it was Detroit and Dan Campbell and the defense was stopping them on fourth downs. That was a really fun one to write. And then the other one was actually one that I wrote very much towards the end of the season, and it was kind of the farewell and the tribute to Dr. McKenzie, Dr. Pat McKenzie, who is officially retiring. He had already shifted into kind of a consultant role as the Packers are making a transition to Dr. Michael Ryan. He will be the new full-time team physician now for the Packers. But I got a chance to sit down, and I have obviously. Doc McKenzie has been here almost twice as long as I have. So I have known him since kind of like the day I got here, and he's been here the entire time. And for this story that I wrote, I got a chance to sit down for about a half an hour and talk to him just about his career and how did he establish trust amongst the players and the agents and the coaches, and how did he navigate all these relationships and do his job. And I was absolutely just fascinated, blown away by everything that went into a guy whose reputation precedes him.
Yeah.
Not only just in the Green Bay medical community, but the NFL medical community at large. And I could have written 5,000 words on Doc McKenzie, and I condensed it down to about 1,000. If
it was me, I probably would have.
Just so that it would be digestible for the readership out there. But that one definitely is a memorable one that I'll take with me for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. It was a great piece, and obviously getting not even just Doc's perspective on it, but also, with Brian Engel and some of his comments, obviously Aaron and Rodgers, and, what their relationship was like, the amount of trust that Aaron had in him. They navigated those two collarbones together.
Yeah.
Which was not easy. Do you remember that conversation in 13? 17 was something different because the Packers announced right away, Rodgers broke his collarbone. He may miss the rest of the season. We'll see.
Yeah.
But the first time, it was about a 2.5 month stretch of just like every single week we're asking. I was still at the newspaper at the time, Press Gazette, and we're asking, okay, what's the update? And is there going to be another scan? And I'm learning about ink dye and how that goes into your bones and shows where the stress is or where the fractures are. And kudos to McKenzie, man. Rodgers has talked about this numerous times after the fact. He wanted to make sure that Aaron was right first. If they win, they win. If he gets back, he gets back. But he had to make sure that there wasn't going to be a risk there for him. And obviously, erring on the high side of caution is not easy. But when you have principles that you're guided by, I think it shows the type of dude he is.
when a team doctor looks at a player as a patient and not a player, then you make the right decision for the patient, and that's how Doc McKenzie went about it. As frustrating as that might be sometimes to the player, to the coaches, because they want the guy wants to get out there, the coaches want their guy out there. But to Doc McKenzie, it wasn't just a player on the team; it was a patient. He was going to make sure that patient was taken care of and was not going to be at any undue risk. But anyway, a tremendous career from Doc McKenzie, and a tribute and a farewell there. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, it is on Packers.com. A couple other things I want to get to here, Wes, before we go, but we do need to pay some bills. So let's hear a word from our sponsors. SiriusXM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. At Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. Pit Boss Grills, the official grill of Packers tailgating at Lambeau or at your house. Take your game day to the next level with a Pit Boss wood pellet grill. Pit Boss Grills available at Menards. Hey Packers fans, we always knew Lambeau Field was a wonder, but now it's official. Learn more about all the wonders of Wisconsin at travelwisconsin.com/wonders. Welcome back to Packers Unscripted. All right, Wes, last thing before we go. Divisional playoff weekend in the NFL. I'll rattle off all 4 matchups here to you. On Saturday, we've got Buffalo at Denver, San Francisco at Seattle. On Sunday, Houston at New England, the LA Rams at the Chicago Bears. You just tell me what you want to talk about, what you think with regard to any of these matchups, or if you want to throw out any predictions, I'm open to those too.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a rooting interest, I feel like, in 3 of the games. 4 of them, sort of a stretch. This is Mercedes Lewis's last season. 20 years he's out. He's, I think, still 41. I think he turns 42. Yeah, I think he's 42 in May. So, Sadie's, I think, presently is on the practice squad for the Denver Broncos, but probably more than anybody, I'm pulling for the Broncos the rest of the way.
Okay.
Not the easiest thing to say, considering some of the things about the Broncos team, but I love Sadie's. I would love nothing more than to see him get a chance to be in a Super Bowl, to win a ring. That would be an ultimate ending to a career that I don't think we'll ever see again in the National Football League. The New England Patriots, they're basically their personnel czar, general manager, whatever title you use, is Elliot Wolf, the son of Ron Wolf, also a guy that you and I worked with here.
Yep.
I love the fact that he helped turn them around as quickly as they did. They obviously knocked the hire out of the park this year with Mike Vrabel. I have nothing against Houston, fine football team, but it'd be cool also to see New England with Elliott at the helm take control. Davante Adams' comments this week, not only do they reflect his feelings on Green Bay, once a Packer, always a Packer, but there's a reason why Davante Adams won our stand-up guy award 3 times, something that nobody else has done yet in Green Bay. It's the way he carries himself. It's the professional that he is on the field, and just the dude as a person. And people are going to talk about the Bears and Ben Johnson, the Arabs. I don't care about any of that. I just want to see Davante make a Super Bowl.
Yep.
And so I think for me personally, the team on the NFC side of things I'm rooting for this weekend, rooting for the rest of the way, is the Los Angeles Rams. To see Tay and Mercedes over on the AFC side of things, if it could be a Denver-LA Super Bowl, I'd be pleased as pie. And then lastly, Packer fans will probably hate me for this, but I wouldn't mind seeing Kyle Shanahan also get over the top here. This is a guy that has been an innovator in the National Football League. You look at his tree, it's like none other. Even the teams that have won Super Bowls, nobody has a tree like Kyle Shanahan right now in the NFL. So basically there's 4 games. I have 4 rooting interests in all those games. And but if you ask me right now, weeks out, if Denver or Los Angeles walked away with the Super Bowl trophy, Lombardi trophy, I'd be happy.
I'm all in with you on Davante Adams for sure. I think that's I think that's an obvious one, and not just because the Rams are playing the Bears, and I have absolutely no interest in seeing the Bears get any further this season. I do think I was thinking about this, and this is nothing against Houston, who has a tremendous defense, and New England, who I couldn't be more impressed with Drake May at quarterback as a young rising star in this league, and what's going on there. But I just have a feeling that the winner of the Buffalo-Denver game is going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
Because I think if Denver is able to win that game, and then they'll be hosting the AFC Championship. We had talked about how Denver has its flaws, but playing at home, that's going to be a very tough place for anybody to come in and beat them, and it's going to be tough for Buffalo to do it on Saturday. But I also feel like with Josh Allen getting his first road playoff victory last week in Jacksonville, now he's on the road and, would be on the road again if they were to beat the Broncos. They'd be going on the road in the AFC Championship. But if Josh Allen gets past this one and has back-to-back road wins in the playoffs under his belt, I think he could go into either Houston or New England and win and get there. And it's interesting because, huge opportunity for Allen when Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow are all out of the playoffs and not in this thing. And some people are going to say, that would taint it somehow if Allen is able to get there. But just remember, in the regular season, he beat all three of those quarterbacks. So the fact that he won all three of those games is part of the reason they weren't in the playoffs to challenge him right now. So I have a lot of affinity for Buffalo, not only having watched them in my college years lose the 4 consecutive Super Bowls and what that fan base went through, but then also my son went to graduate school out in Buffalo. And so they've sort of become my second adopted team, and I enjoy cheering for Josh Allen. He's a fun player to watch, and I'll definitely be pulling for him. In the NFC, I think the San Francisco-Seattle game is I think it's going to be a little more competitive than it was a couple of weeks ago. But I'm telling you, the Niners kind of got screwed here because they are playing on a short week for the third time in their last 4 games. They ended the regular season with back-to-back short weeks where they had to go from the Monday night against Indy to then the Sunday game against the Bears, and then they went from the Sunday game against the Bears to the Saturday game against the Seahawks. And then now here they are in the second round of the playoffs, and they got stuck with a short week again where Sunday night they're flying back home from Philadelphia all the way across the country, and then they get stuck on Saturday night. So on Friday they're hopping on a plane again to go up to Seattle and play their division rival for a third time. I think this is just a huge challenge, a huge task for the 49ers, and the fact that now amongst all their other injuries they don't have George Kittle. So I think things definitely lean towards Seattle, but man, if Kyle Shanahan, if they're able to pull this one off, there's definitely no stopping them. If San Francisco wins this game, they're going back to the Super Bowl, and Shanahan's going to get a chance. Going to get a chance to win one.
It feels kind of like if Green Bay would knock off Atlanta here, right, in 2010, 11.
Yeah.
It feels like that type of game. If you can find an answer for that defense after you struggled against it 2 weeks ago, it'd be a big difference.
Yeah, I think so too.
How funny would it be, by the way? Not to jump over you, but how funny would it be, by the way, if Denver actually does go to the Super Bowl, like you say, 10 years after the fact that their defense drove them there.
Yeah.
Right? I would say that Bo Nix has been more effective than what Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler were in 2015.
Yeah.
But he's the complement to what they're doing defensively, right? What they're doing offensively complements how much they've had everybody in a stranglehold defensively.
Yeah.
If they would go back with this really high octane pass rush and everything they do, that would be very apropos 10 years after the fact that they kind of rode that to a Super Bowl 50 title.
Yeah. I think it's some fascinating matchups, and we may, in both instances, in both conferences, and it's interesting considering that the Packers season ended in a round 3 against a division rival. We could get Buffalo and New England. That would be a round 3 for the AFC East. And if the Rams beat the Bears, no matter who wins the other game, you're getting a round 3 of the NFC West. And hats off to the NFC West. They got 3 teams in the playoffs, and they're 3 of the last 4 standing in the NFC. Those are some real quality clubs, and they've proven it regardless of what happmes this week.
Yeah, and kudos to them too. They get beat up. They're beating up on each other, especially down the stretch in December.
Yeah.
And then you had both, the 49ers and the Rams come out on top on road games in the first round of the playoffs in the wild card round, and see if they can keep riding that wave of momentum now to a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Well, it should be a fun weekend of football, even though the Packers are not in it. I'm going to sit back and enjoy watching it. Instead of a laptop in front of me, I'm going to have some beers in front of me.
There you go. I might have a brisk iced tea. We'll see. Curtain call for the studio too, bruv.
That's right. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
The unbelievable job that our broadcast department, Craig Schielbauer, Adam Holber-Heinrich, their crew, Mike Vanderschnick, God rest his soul, all those guys had their fingerprints over this place. This was a fun place to do the podcast all those years.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a lot of fun. We will be moving. It's actually geographically not that far from here in the building, but we will be moving to a new studio for next season. We're going to have a whole different, whole new podcast setup and everything. Kind of excited to see what that's going to look like. But yeah, this is it for this one with our 2 little round tables and the big behind us.
Remember when we started this whole thing with that?
Yeah, what is this? This is season 10, right?
Season
of Packers
10.
Unscripted. We're wrapping up season 10 here.
In our first, the first 4 seasons, we're in the corner with that metal table. You and I are basically shoulder to shoulder, breathing a lot of the same air, and then they stretched us out a little bit here, and slowly but surely we're making progress. We're looking more and more professional. It's only taken 10 years to get us there.
Yeah, now we're going to have a whole new look for season 11, but you'll have that to look forward to. And for now, we have to call it a wrap on this edition and this season of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to continue following all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. And I would just like to send a huge thank you. I know I say at the end of every episode, thank you for tuning in, everybody. But sincerely, thank you for tuning in, everybody, because we wouldn't do this if we didn't have an audience.
Or a paycheck.
That too. And we really do appreciate everybody who tunes in and sends us comments, and whether it's the podcast or the video version, whatever you prefer, we appreciate your patronage. So with that, for Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.